in Australia and New Zealand, a chemical engineer with post-graduation in business administration with marketing as specialization. He has more than 20 years of business experience in specialty chemicals, particularly in biocides. Welcome our speaker on stage with a huge round of applause, please. I request you to kindly be seated. Our speakers have worked hard on their presentations. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's a time where I need to just rush because I've been actually given a limited time compared to what was actually talked about in the past. The topic that I'm going to just talk today is the current practices and trends. Sorry, there was an error in the topic that was actually put in the initial brochure. I'll rush through about the entire presentation with four different parts. The first one, I will just give a brief outlay of what is Lonza. Lonza is basically a Swiss company, and it has a presence in almost like 40 different countries, and we are one of the largest in terms of supplies of biocides. And we were found in 1897, almost like 120 years this year, and we are actually just now operating in two different segments. One is the pharma, and the other one is the specialty ingredients. On the pharma side, we really produce a lot of custom manufactured and custom developed products. However, on the specialty ingredient side, we are very much associated with the consumer care, agrochemicals, coatings and composites, and water treatment. So basically, we have our strengths based on the biotechnology side, fine chemistries. We are also into formulation and applied technology backed up by regulatory microbial control performance and testing services. I come in from the materials protection part. So these are the major segments that we really just participate. We offer products for the coatings, marine, plastics, metals, and composite industries. We have some sophisticated products, but our basic strength lies in antimicrobial solutions. So we are probably one of the largest in the field of coatings and composites, where we offer two different segments. One is the biocides, and the other one is thermoset range of applications, which are used in high-end applications like temperature-resistant coatings, which are used in smartphones. So what are we and what is our vision? Basically, we protect your business. When I mean protect your business, we are dedicated to ensuring that your products and manufacturing facilities are free from contamination by offering products which are very well recognized in the market. Proxils, Denzel, Omidines, and Homicides are products which we offer to the industry. And these are world-class ones where we support as well, the regulatory as well as the technological part as well. We are the preferred biocide supplier partners. Lonza offers a broad portfolio. We also give a good amount of technical support. And
Mr. Anirban,
provide regulatory expertise. Now, this expertise is something which I will
rheology control, obviously,
and then we talk actually of importance for the Indian industry going forward. So what is paint biocides? Very simple, topic. Anything that kills or protects or prevents the growth of microbes is called biocides. So why do paints specifically need a biocide? For any microorganisms to grow, we need to just have four things important. A nutrient where the microbes can really just feed on, the moisture or water, and most of your water-based products will really have this, and a good temperature and pH. Ideally, the climatic conditions in this part of the world are very much supportive of actually all the microorganisms to grow. So a paint definitely needs this because it contains all the four ingredients that I really talked about at this point of time. We from Lonza offer in-can preservatives for your decorative products, which are Aquaspace, Proxils, Denzels, Omidine, and Homicide are well-known brand names globally and even in India. We've been there for the past almost like 50 years with the Proxil range here. And the Omidines and Homicides have been known at least for the last 10 years in India. Another interesting aspect of a product that we really give to the paints and coatings is the copper Omidine, which is basically an anti-fouling agent, which is used in the shipbuilding industry. All ships have to be just coated with products containing copper Omidine or tributyl tin oxide. Tributyl tin oxide was actually banned few years back, and today most of the ships that are there are running with the copper-bromidine or similar type of ingredients. It reduces the drag by allowing no barnacles or algae to just grow on the ship hulls. So typically coming on to what are the different types of actives that we could really give for protecting or preserving any paints. We have heard most of these, CMIT, MIT, BIT, and variety of isothiazolones and formaldehyde donors. Normally, the paint industry today either goes in with a single active or a combination of actives. Combination of actives is today preferred for various reasons, and we biocide companies do really recommend the combinations so that you really get a full portfolio of protection against a varied type of microorganisms. The ones which you normally see are combinations of CMIT, MIT, BIT plus MIT, and CMIT, MIT plus formaldehyde releases. Formaldehyde releases are not preferred in some of the developed countries, but in developing countries it is still prevalent, and it is actually probably, I would say, still and will continue to just be used for over the years to come. Lonza does really have a lot of portfolio of products. We do really have different formulations containing the various actives that I already mentioned. The ones which are commonly seen here is Proxil GXL, which is a 20% BIT-based formulations. We also offer the CMIT, MIT, and the formaldehyde combinations as well. The last two products, Proxil BZ Plus and LS, I will talk about it a little bit more at the end of the presentation. These are the new generation of preservatives that are actually being introduced into the market. I'm going to talk about the regulatory trends which are there governing the usage of biocides. This is a very important topic which is more known in the European market, and this is gaining importance in our country too. So I'll start with what is really happening in the international segment, and then really just come on how it is going to really just have an impact in the Indian market. I'm going to really just talk about a couple of things. The first one is the GHS, which is basically the globalized harmonized system. So this has been adopted way back in 2002, and this is something which is a precedence to the CLP, which is Classification, Labeling and Packaging, which was introduced in 2009 by the European Union. So the GHS and CLP today are actually gaining more and more importance in the European segment, and there are more adaptations on the technical progress since then. So what are these? Basically, what does GHS mean? It is nothing but pictorial representation and written representation. So any chemical,
the journey where we keep learning all throughout. So what points did you like the most?
Points for this conference?
For this conference or this session or any other session throughout the past 2 days?
9 out of 10.
Wow, can we give him a big hand, everybody? 9 out of 10. I hope next time we'll make it 10 out of 10, right? How about you?
The same, the 10 of 10.
इनको सीटियां भी चाहिए तालियों के साथ. So what part of the session or what part of the conference did you like the most?
As biocides in your paints. There are many chemicals that you will just see on the right-hand side, right from carbendazim, OIT, DCOIT, BBIT, and zinc parathion. These are chemicals which are used as fungicides, and depending upon the dosage that is being used in your paint, you will have to just define and determine and declare it on your product, on your container of the paint. So if it is, say the last one, which is carbendazim, if it is used at 0.05%, which is 500 ppm, you don't need to just declare anything at all. But if you are really using it at anywhere between 0.1 to 0.25, you will have to just put the R46 number along with the skull and bone pictorial representation on the paint can. Similarly, if it really just goes a little bit higher, up to 2.5%, you may have to just put in the R40, R60, and R5153 along with the dead sea, dead tree, dead fish pictorial representation. So is for the algicides. So if you really look at diuron at around 1% plus, you may have to just put in R40 and R52, 53. Whereas if it goes up to 2.5, you may have to just put the other pictorial representations as well. Now, what is this R40 and R52, 51, 53? Basically, these are descriptive ones which clearly says the nature of the chemicals that is being used. If it is R26, it is toxic by inhalation. R51, 53 means it is toxic to the aquatic organisms. It may cause long-term adverse effects in the aquatic environment that the product could really find usage. So these are defined clearly by the European Union, and today most of the developing countries are also trying to just ape this particular, phrases that are being used. So what is actually changing compared to what was declared in the European Union in the past? I will take specifically the in-can preservatives and then start off, what's really happening. The European Union started looking at the various molecules, and depending upon how toxic it is, started really putting up the maximum limit to which this can be really just present in a paint, in a water-based product. For example, the CMIT-MIT, a paint, if it contains up to 15 ppm, you don't need to just put in anything, any marks, any declarations, any R labelings on the product's container. But if it crosses 15 ppm, you may have to just put the H317, or the may cause an allergic reaction on the skin. So these are descriptions that you need to just put in on your container. Similarly for BIT, it was 500 ppm. Okay, these levels were all defined very long time ago, probably 10 years before. So what has actually happened in the recent past? In the year 2015, in the month of June, there was a revision in the CLP regulations, and you defined it to be much lower. So what happened? The CMIT, which was at 15 ppm, became 1.5 ppm. The level of BIT, which was at 500 ppm, became 50 ppm. So the clear message is that over the past 10 years, the human resistance, or the threshold of the human acceptance of these chemicals has actually reduced tenfold. So if you really look at using the same 0.1% or 0.15% of the same biocides, today probably it is actually not acceptable. So you need to go 10 times lower. And at 10 times lower dosages, do you think that you would really get the same kind of preference? No, you would not. So that's actually a challenge. And that's actually driving the whole thing to different products and newer formulations. There's another product which is always been talked about on the European side, which is the MIT. MIT has been classified as a skin sensitizer, and it requires labeling of a H317 even at 15 ppm and above. This is actually reclassified as fatal if it is inhaled, and reclassified as toxic if swallowed. If you want to just have more details about this, there is the ECHA, which is the European Chemical Agency website. You could really just get in and find more details. Today, if you really just go into YouTube and put in MIT, you would really just get a lot of videos which shows how damaging it is. For your information, MIT is being used in many of the personal care products globally. So you can really just see some of the face packs containing MIT, and you would see how hazardous it is. So what's really happening? So if you have more than 15 ppm of MIT, you may have to just put the GHS-07 pictogram, and you may have to just put in sensitization skin irritant warning on the label. So this is something which is equivalent to almost like 500 ppm of BIT. So BIT as a molecule is actually seen to be a much more better ones than MIT globally. People are moving away from MIT. So the products which used to be preserved with the BIT plus MIT combination, or MIT plus MBIT combinations are moving towards MIT free. The impact is that it will require time, and of course there is an effort we need to just put in to make sure that your product is actually compatible with all the the biocides that we are really talking about. European manufacturers are already moving away from MIT-based preservation systems. So what are the alternatives that we really have? Lonza has been actually offering a portfolio of products. We do really have a lot of newer ones which have been introduced in the past few years. And in 2017, we did really introduce the Proxel Spectra, which is a new formulation. What are these? Basically, they are combinations of BIT and zincomodine. Zincomodine is, the chemistry is pyrithions. So pyrithion chemistry, which is traditionally been used as a dry film active, is actually being looked at as an in-can preservative as well. So we have also introduced BIT plus sodium pyrithion combinations, which is gaining acceptance. You may find that under the Proxel BC, which I've really mentioned at the right-hand side, contains still BIT plus CMIT, MIT, but at that dose levels that we specify, it is still within the permissible levels that we really can use in the European context. Now, I've been continuously saying that all these things on the European context. I have reasons to do that because I need to just explain to you why and how it is going to impact India as well. Pyridinones, these are very safe molecules compared to the others that are available as biocide actives. They are not classified as skin sensitizers and does not attract H317. They have some good pH and thermal stability, compatible with most of the raw materials that are used in paint, and it has a very broad spectrum of activity. The most interesting fact is that the way that these molecules really perform. One has a completely different way of killing the microorganisms compared to the others. BIT is electrophilic active. So what does it really do? It really just disrupts the metabolic activity by reacting with the thiol group, and it makes sure that the microorganisms does not really metabolize. Whereas in the case of pyridinones, it actually acts as a chelating agent and makes sure that the ionic gradation is completely changed. So you have two different actives with two different way of actually killing microorganisms, as a result of which these have very complementary mechanisms when it is actually combined. That's the reason why we really chose the BIT with a pyridinone combination. On the dry film side, we do have a lot of challenges. If you just look at the list I have really given here, there are very few fungicides and very fewer algicides. The ones that we normally see in the Indian markets are carbendazim, DCOIT, and OIT. And of course, on the algicidal side, we do really have diron being very commonly used in the Indian climatic conditions. Zincomodine, which is actually a combination of fungicide and algicidal properties, is actually gaining more importance and prominence in this part of the world. So what happens? How do people really just choose which products to be used? It all depends on the solubility. So as you could see, there are three different classifications. One which has very high water solubility, like the OIT and BBIT and IPBC. The other one which has medium, and the third one is the lower water soluble. So you can really just see that the ones which are predominantly used in this part of the world are the ones which are in Group A and Group B, which is very essential because today most of the paint manufacturers are actually giving extended warranty of 3 years, 5 years, and 7 years. So the longer the warranty that you will give, the lesser it has to just be soluble, because every time there is a rain, the products has to just come out and actually start giving protection to your dry fill. This is one of the most commonly seen combination: 20% diuron, 10% carbendazim, and 2.5% OIT. Denzel DF from Lonza is a market standard one. There are many products which are similar to this, and this has been like a workhorse, in the Indian climatic conditions. It has been there for many, many years to come. But however, I would definitely want to point out what are the issues that we are really looking at. Carbendazim potentially attracts both health hazard and environmental hazards, and there are pictorial terms which needs to be put in, clearly defining that it is having a lot of toxicological issues, and this has been reviewed many a times, and even in Indian conditions, I think the Central Insecticide Board is actually wanting to review the usage of carbendazim in the Indian climatic conditions in the year 2018. Diuron does really have a lot of review, and it depends upon what concentration that is seen in the paint. You need to just put in the R5253 or 5153. Of course, these are chemicals which are definitely being used quite very rampantly in the Indian paint industry. Now, I'm just looking at giving a few challenges what a coatings formulator has. Basically, you have a few actives on the fungicidal side: carbendazim, chlorothalonil, and zincomodine. Every single active has its own pluses and minuses. When you look at carbendazim, barring the toxicological front, you do really have very limited activity against algae, and there are gaps in the antifungal spectrum as well. But however, it has a very good stability over a wide pH range. So looking at it, if you just say, okay, the toxicological is not good, if you don't want to use it, what else is left? You're left with chlorothalonil and zincomodine. So chlorothalonil does have pluses, that it has very low water solubility, good antifungal spectrum, but however, it does hydrolyze very alkaline pH, and there is also the problem of compatibility with the other ingredients that you really see in a paint, and which leads to pinking and yellowing issues. There is also chalking, which you normally see. So chlorothalonil also has issues. So ideally, if you look at the next one, which is zincomodine, It does also have a lot of pluses, and of course it also has a transchelation effect, which will really lead to coloration issues. What does Lonza do to really just do this? We did really introduce a product called zinc omidine Zoe, which is basically a stabilized version with 48% ZPT, and it is a water-based dispersion. And this has a patented technology worldwide, which there is a patent which governs the usage of zinc salts with the zinc parathion, which will prevent the discoloration on the paint. This product has been there widely used, and it is being used in many paint formulations that are available in India. For your information, zinc parathion is an active which you normally use in all your personal care products. If you are using some of the famous brands of shampoos which claim to be anti-dandruff, probably you are already using the ZPT here, because this is a product which is which you can see in most of the advertisements which the leading companies put in as a ZPTO. So ZPTO is nothing but zinc parathion, and it is regularly used in most of the brands of shampoos that are available in India. Having said that, zinc omidine also requires labeling thing, but the only good thing is it does not really attract health hazard labels. It only attracts environmental hazard labels. That too when it is used at a dosage level of 6,000 ppm and above. Now, not many countries do really have environmental hazard labeling in practice. So it is still continuing to be used, and this is gaining more popularity in most of the European nations. Now, I still again come back saying, all these things, how does it really have a relationship with the Indian scenario? India is actually also looking at what is being used in the Western world, which is the advanced countries, and we try and actually just take everything that is actually used there and try to really fit it into our regulations, our framework of operations. So these two slides, which I'm going to really talk about, probably is what I'm going to insist on. So what are we really talking about? These molecules that are there are typically classified as pesticides. For example, the diarones and the carbendazimines are listed in the Schedule of Insecticide Act. Way back in 1972, this was actually put in as an act, and we find that there is a lot of increased usage of these algicides. So many biocide companies which are there in India have been trying to work with the authorities, and we finally have risen to the fact that Central Insecticide Board, which governs the usage of pesticide for agrochemical usage, is the nodal agency that is going to really just govern the usage of biocides in the paints as well. There are many paint companies which are now trying to use these paints and claim to really have some pesticidal properties, which clearly are going to be governed by the nodal authority. Now, what does it really mean? This Central Insecticide Board has actually defined a lot of guidelines for the usage of pesticides in the agrochemical front. They are trying to just use the same guidelines for paint. Is that something which is exactly acceptable? No, not at all, because ours is not really just going to be as straight used into the environment as what we see in the in practice. So we want to really look at how the guidelines have to be defined, completely suiting the paint industry. In 2015, suddenly the government, particularly the authorities in the Central Insecticide Board, came out with a clear differentiation, declaration saying that you need to just stop using diaron or carbendazim in the paint. So the industry went into a turmoil because we don't really have an active, any other active which is completely, within their framework, what they call it as a framework at so much of dosage levels. So the industry has to really just fight the system. We have to really just approach the authorities. There were governmental bodies which really just were instrumental in actually just taking this up. The Confederation of Indian Industry, the Indian Chemical Council, the IPAs and the ISPAs of the world of India have taken this up as a joint forum, and there was a subcommittee that was actually formed. The subcommittee did really have representation from the IPA, from ISPA, from ICC and CIA. So there has been a lot of deliberations on what should be really looked at, what is the maximum level that can be allowed, what can be really done. Will paint be really just asked to be registered? There are, and if so, what is the criteria which will really just define why paint has to be registered? There are a lot of deliberations and a lot of observations have been obtained from these kind of subcommittee meetings. There are people who have represented the nodal bodies sitting in this August audience as well. So we have taken this up with the Central Insecticide Board. They are adamant on certain things. They are agreeable to just look at certain criteria which the industry has put through, but still the guideline is yet to be released. So it's taken almost like 2 years, and still we are not really just progressed much. That is typical because the industry wants to just protect itself from the usage. Today, can we really just use a biocide which is actually non-diuron, non-carbendazim, non-zinc parathion based? No, we don't really have an alternate at this point of time which will really give a protection for your paint which can withstand for 3 to 5 years time. So there have been recommendations made. The authorities have finally said that, okay, let's just give you some temporary permits, but the temporary permits means you need to just procure and use products which are from registered sources. So there are many companies which are registered with the Central Insecticide Board for these actives, and we have really just started using this. But however, having said that, there are limited active suppliers sourced today which are registered. And we have to just buy from the registered source, and the registered source means we need to just make sure that the tox data is actually available. Once the guidelines are released, then we need to just take it up with the authorities to submit these biocides and get it registered, clearly telling them that we are buying from these sources and this is the maximum dosage that can be used, etc. So this is going to take a long-drawn process, which means the biocides that we really supply have to be submitted. And if we have a shelf life of, say, 1 year, then the data which is required on the toxicological front has to be one and a half times, which means 18 months from the day that we really submit the sample. The data has to be generated in a lab in India, and there is a cost associated with it. The cost is very expensive for these kind of data generation. And there is a time required also, which is going to be very high. Now, I still would like to just throw open some of the points that has been actually deliberated. Well, paint containing biocides also need to be registered. At this point of time, the industry says no, it is not. It is the biocides that needs to be registered. But however, the authorities feel that if a paint claims to really have algal or fungal properties, it will have to be subjected for registrations. So paint containing the same ingredients but which make a claim may have to be registered. This is still not final. I'm just saying may have to be registered. So biocides used in paints, not all products are actually, actives are actually going to be registered. That's the assumption with which we really started, because there are only few actives which are listed in the schedule. But today, there is a move for actually just from the authorities to just push in all the actives which claim to give bacterial, fungal, or algal properties to be included into the schedule. And they have the authority to just include any chemical. So we can't really just fight against them. So this could also come in. So which means, what are we really talking about? We are really talking about generation of data, provision of products which are from approved sources, and this could really have a long-term impact on the way that the industry is going to be really just progressing. These are things which are going to be there. India is definitely very much concerned, and we have some eminent people in the registration committee of Central Insecticide Board who are wanting to just make sure that everything is aligned towards the developed countries so that our environment is also protected. So with that, I just want to really just say, what does Lonza can really just do? Okay, Lonza, we are a global company. We are prevalent in most of the developed countries. We have done the registrations for the products that we supply to the market in many countries where these regulations are much more stricter. So we would be supplying products which will require complex registration and regulatory compliance. We understand how the entire setup works, and we have been working with global agencies. Our expertise extends to all the areas of biocides that we do. I would only just make an earnest request, let Lonza guide you through the regulatory landscape which is going to come into India. Thanks a lot for giving this time. I think I'm well within the 30 minutes.
Check. May I request Mr. Tarun Mittal to kindly join us on stage and present a memento to Mr. Selvanna Kumar. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. And for all those who are still seated with